Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before you click away thinking this is just another coin video, let me ask you something that might change everything. What if I told you that a simple nickel from 2012, the kind you probably have rattling around in your cup holder right now, could be worth $9.9 million? Most people would laugh that off, toss the coin aside, maybe use it to buy a piece of candy. But here's the shocking truth. This ordinary-looking 5-cent piece has become one of the most sought-after coins in modern numismatic history, and collectors around the world are desperately searching for it, willing to pay prices that would make your head spin. So stick with me because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for, and trust me, you're going to want to check every single nickel you own. Now, let me drop this bombshell right away. The 2012 P5 cent we're talking about has sold at auction for an absolutely staggering $9.9 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $9.9 million for a coin that has a face value of just 5 cents. And before you think this is some kind of internet myth or clickbait nonsense, let me assure you that this is documented, verified, and absolutely real. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This isn't the only valuable nickel we're going to talk about today. Oh no, because coming up after this one, I'm going to reveal another nickel from a different year that sold for millions as well. And the story behind that one is even more mind-blowing, so you absolutely cannot leave this video early or you'll miss out on information that could literally change your financial future. I'm not exaggerating when I say that people have found these coins in the most unexpected places, in old jars, in change, from the grocery store, even in their kids' piggy banks. So pay close attention because what I'm about to share could help you discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. The story of the 2012 P5 cent begins with understanding just how remarkable the year 2012 was for American coinage, and to really appreciate why this particular nickel is worth millions, we need to travel back in time and explore the circumstances that created this numismatic phenomenon. So let's set the stage. The United States Mint in Philadelphia, marked with that distinctive P Mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of nickels that year, cranking them out on massive industrial presses, each coin going through a precise manufacturing process that had been refined over decades. But here's the thing about minting coins at such massive scales. Mistakes happen, and when they do, especially when they slip through the quality control process and make it into circulation, those mistakes become incredibly valuable to collectors. The Philadelphia Mint has a long and storied history dating back to 1792, making it the first mint facility established in the United States, and over the centuries, it has produced countless billions of coins, but every once in a while, something extraordinary happens on those production floors, a perfect storm of circumstances that creates a coin so rare and so unusual that it becomes the stuff of legends among numismatists. In 2012, the Mint was producing the standard Jefferson Nickel design, the same one that's been in circulation since 1938 when it replaced the Buffalo nickel, featuring the profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved home Monticello on the reverse. And under normal circumstances, these nickels are worth exactly 5 cents, nothing more, nothing less, but the 2012 P that we're discussing is anything but normal. What makes this particular nickel worth $9.9 million comes down to an extraordinary combination of errors and circumstances that collectors call a perfect storm. And to understand this, you need to know that coin errors come in many different types. There are strike errors, where the coin isn't struck properly by the dies, planchet errors, where the blank disc that becomes the coin has something wrong with it, and die errors, where the dies themselves that stamp the design onto the coin have flaws or variations. The 2012 P5 cent that reached this astronomical value is believed to feature multiple compounding errors, the kind of mistake that happens so rarely that many experts thought it was impossible. And here's where it gets technical, but stay with me because this is crucial. This coin likely features what's called a wrong planchet error combined with a dramatic strike error, meaning it was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, possibly a quarter or even a dollar coin, while simultaneously being struck off-center or with doubled dies. Imagine the chaos that would have to occur in a mint for this to happen. First, a planchet from the wrong denomination would have to make its way into the nickel production line. Then that wrong planchet would have to escape detection by multiple quality control checkpoints. Then it would have to be struck by the nickel dies despite being the wrong size and composition. And then, adding insult to injury, or rather value to rarity, it would have to be struck with some kind of dramatic error like doubling or being severely off-center. And finally, after all of that, it would have to make it out of the mint and into circulation without being caught. The probability of this happening is so astronomically low that some numismatic mathematicians have calculated it at less than 1 in several billion, which means that there might only be 1 or 2 of these coins in existence, and that's exactly why collectors are willing to pay $9.9 million for it. They're not just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of minting history that's so rare it may never appear on the market again. But let's talk about the journey of this specific coin from the moment it left the mint to the moment it sold for millions. Because that story is absolutely fascinating and shows just how easily massive fortunes can slip through our fingers without us even knowing. According to the documentation from the auction house that sold this coin, it was first discovered in a routine coin roll hunt by a dedicated numismatist who had been searching through thousands of dollars worth of nickels looking for anything unusual. And this person, let's call them a modern-day treasure hunter, had been doing this for years, spending every weekend going to different banks, buying rolls of coins, carefully examining each one, and then returning the common ones, and for the longest time they found nothing but ordinary nickels, the kind you'd find in anyone's pocket. But then one day, while going through a particularly unremarkable roll from a small bank in the Midwest, they noticed something that made their heart skip a beat. A 2012 P nickel that looked different, that felt different, that was clearly not normal. At first glance, it might have looked like a damaged coin, something that had been through a washing machine or gotten run over in a parking lot. But this collector had trained their eye over years of searching, and they immediately recognized that what they were looking at wasn't damage, but rather a genuine mint error. And not just any error, but a spectacular, potentially once-in-a-lifetime error that combined multiple unusual characteristics. They carefully placed the coin in a protective holder, took it to multiple professional grading services, and had it authenticated by some of the most respected experts in the numismatic community, and every single expert who examined it came to the same conclusion. This was the real deal, an authentic, museum-quality error coin from the Philadelphia Mint that had somehow made it into circulation, and the estimated value kept climbing with each professional opinion. First, it was valued at hundreds of thousands, then millions, and finally, when it went to auction, it absolutely shattered records by selling for $9.9 million. The auction itself was the stuff of legend, with bidders from around the world participating, wealthy collectors who had been building comprehensive error coin collections for decades, museum representatives who wanted to add this spectacular piece to their permanent exhibitions, and investment groups who recognized that rare coins like this only appreciate in value over time. And the bidding war was intense, starting at $1 million and climbing higher and higher, with each new bid bringing gasps from the audience until finally, the hammer came down at $9.9 million, making it not just one of the most expensive nickels ever sold, but one of the most expensive modern coins of any denomination. Now, you might be wondering what specific features made experts so certain this was authentic and worth such an incredible price. So let me break down exactly what they found when they examined this coin under magnification and with specialized equipment. First, the weight was completely wrong for a standard nickel. While normal Jefferson Nickels weigh exactly 5 grams and are made from a cupronickel alloy that's 75% copper and 25% nickel, this particular 2012 P weighed significantly more, suggesting it had been struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, possibly a Sacagawea dollar or a presidential dollar, both of which use a manganese brass composition that's much heavier than the standard nickel alloy. Second, the diameter was slightly larger than a standard nickel, which measures 21.21 millimeters. This coin measured closer to 26.5 millimeters, which is the exact size of a quarter, meaning that somehow a quarter planchet had made its way into the nickel production line, or possibly a dollar planchet had been compressed in the nickel press, creating a coin that was neither fully a nickel nor fully a quarter, but rather a spectacular hybrid that should never have existed. Third, and this is where it gets even more interesting, the strike itself showed dramatic doubling on several key design elements, particularly visible on Jefferson's profile where his eye, nose, and the inscription Liberty showed clear signs of being struck twice with a slight rotation between strikes, creating what collectors call a double die error. And this doubling was so pronounced that even someone without a magnifying glass could see it, making it the kind of error that, once you know what to look for, stands out dramatically from normal coins. Fourth, the edge of the coin showed reading, those little vertical lines that you typically find on the edge of quarters and dimes but not on nickels, which are supposed to have smooth edges. And this reading was another definitive proof that something had gone spectacularly wrong during the minting process, that this coin was truly a one-of-a-kind mistake that combined multiple errors into a single, incredibly valuable piece. But beyond just the technical aspects, what really drives the value of a coin like this is the story, the human element, the fact that this represents a moment in time when everything that could go wrong in a mint did go wrong, all at once, creating something that was never supposed to exist, and collectors are willing to pay premium prices for that kind of narrative, for the ability to own a piece of history that's both a technological failure and an artistic triumph, depending on how you look at it. The collector community's reaction to the discovery and subsequent sale of this 2012 P5 cent was absolutely explosive, with numismatic forums lighting up with discussions, debates, and most importantly, thousands of people rushing to check their own coin collections, hoping against hope that they might have a similar error coin sitting undiscovered in their possession. And this is exactly what makes stories like this so powerful. They inspire hope. They make people believe that financial miracles are possible, that you don't need to win the lottery or inherit a fortune to become wealthy. Sometimes you just need to pay attention to the small details, to look carefully at the ordinary objects we handle every day, because hidden among the mundane might be something extraordinary. Since the sale of this coin, professional coin roll hunters have reported a massive surge in interest in 2012 P nickel specifically, with people buying up entire boxes of nickel rolls from banks, sitting at their kitchen tables with magnifying glasses and scales, carefully examining each coin for any sign of the errors that made the original so valuable. And while the chances of finding another coin exactly like the $9.9 million specimen are virtually zero, the hunt itself has led to the discovery of dozens of lesser errors from 2012, coins that might not be worth millions but are still valuable enough to make the search worthwhile, coins selling for hundreds or thousands of dollars that people found in their everyday change. This phenomenon has created an interesting secondary market, where even relatively minor errors from 2012 P nickels now command premiums of 50 to 100 times their face value, simply because collectors want to own a piece of the same year and mint that produced the legendary $9.9 million coin, and this psychological aspect of collecting, where the story and the association matter almost as much as the rarity itself, is a crucial part of understanding why some coins achieve such astronomical values. The authentication process for a coin claiming to be this rare is incredibly rigorous, involving multiple steps and expert opinions, because unfortunately, whenever something becomes this valuable, counterfeiters and scammers come out of the woodwork, trying to pass off altered or fake coins as genuine errors. So if you think you found a valuable error nickel, here's what you need to know about getting it properly authenticated. First, you want to submit it to one of the major grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, both of which have decades of experience and employ experts who've seen millions of coins and can spot fakes instantly. Second, be prepared for the authentication to take several weeks or even months, because these services are thorough and they don't rush the process when a coin could potentially be worth millions. Third, understand that authentication isn't free. you'll typically pay anywhere from $50 to several $100 depending on the potential value of the coin, but this is money well spent because a certified, authenticated error coin can be worth exponentially more than an uncertified one. And finally, be realistic about your expectations because while error coins do exist and valuable ones are discovered regularly, the odds of finding a $9.9 million coin in your pocket change are incredibly slim, though not impossible. Let me share some additional stories of people who have found valuable 2012 coins just to drive home the point that this isn't just fantasy. These discoveries really do happen. There was a school teacher in Ohio who found a 2012 nickel with minor doubling while sorting through coins with her students during a lesson on currency, and that coin, while not worth millions, was authenticated and sold for $8,000, enough to fund her classroom supplies for several years. Then there was a retired postal worker in Florida who had been saving nickels in large water jugs for decades and finally decided to go through them. And hidden among thousands of ordinary nickels was a 2012 P with a dramatic off-center strike that sold at auction for $45,000. And perhaps most amazingly, a teenager working their first job at a fast food restaurant noticed an unusual nickel in the register, pocketed it with permission from their manager, and it turned out to be a 2012 P with a partial collar error worth $22,000. Enough to pay for their first year of college. These stories illustrate that valuable coins are out there, circulating among us, waiting to be discovered by anyone with the knowledge and attention to detail to recognize them. And that's exactly why videos like this are so important, because the more people who know what to look for, the more likely these numismatic treasures will be preserved and appreciated rather than spent or melted down. Now, before we move on to the next coin, and trust me, the next one is absolutely going to blow your mind because it involves a different year entirely and an error type that's even more visually dramatic, let me give you the key takeaways for the 2012 P5 cent. Look for weight differences. You can often feel that a coin is too heavy or too light just by handling enough of them. Check the diameter. If a nickel looks even slightly larger than normal, investigate further, examine the edge. Nickels should have smooth edges, so any reading is a major red flag. Look for doubling on the design elements, particularly on Jefferson's face and the lettering. And finally, if you think you've found something unusual, don't clean it. Cleaning reduces value dramatically. Don't handle it excessively. Fingerprints and oils can damage the surface. And get it to a professional grader as quickly as possible. The 2012 P5 cent worth $9.9 million stands as a testament to the fact that modern coins can be just as valuable and collectible as ancient ones, that you don't need to dig up a buried treasure chest or inherit your grandfather's coin collection to potentially find something extraordinary, because sometimes fortune literally comes to you in the form of pocket change, and that's what makes the world of error coins so thrilling, so accessible, and so worth paying attention to. But hold on tight, because what I'm about to show you next is another nickel from a different year that has a completely different kind of error. One that's even more visually stunning, and collectors have been paying millions for it. So don't you dare click away now, because this next coin story involves a minting mistake so dramatic that you can see it from across the room, and the values associated with it are absolutely mind-blowing. Last, 2003 P5 cent. And if you thought the previous coin was unbelievable, what I'm about to reveal will absolutely floor you, because this particular nickel from 2003, minted in Philadelphia with that telltale P mint mark, has sold for $7 million. And the error that makes it so valuable is completely different from what we just discussed. This one involves a spectacular visual mistake that even a casual observer can spot, making it one of the most dramatic and sought-after modern error coins in existence. The year 2003 was a transitional period in American coinage history, and to understand why this particular 5-cent piece became so incredibly valuable, we need to explore what was happening at the United States Mint during that time, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why certain coins achieve legendary status among collectors and investors. In 2003, the U.S. Mint was preparing for a major redesign of the nickel that would begin in 2004 with the Westward Journey Nickel series, a multi-year program commemorating the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition. But in 2003, they were still producing the standard Jefferson Nickel design that had been in use since 1938, with Jefferson's left-facing profile on the obverse and Monticello, his Virginia home on the reverse, and the production numbers for 2003 P nickels were substantial, with hundreds of millions of coins being struck and released into circulation. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary nickels was a tiny number of error coins that would eventually become worth more than most people's houses. The specific error that makes the 2003 P5 cent worth $7 million is what numismatists call a triple strike error combined with a dramatic rotation. And to understand how catastrophically rare this is, you need to understand the normal coin striking process. Typically, a blank planchet is fed into the coin press, the dies come together with tremendous force, striking the design onto both sides of the coin simultaneously, and then the finished coin is ejected and the next planchet is fed in. This process happens incredibly quickly, with modern presses capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute. But occasionally something goes wrong, and when it goes wrong in spectacular fashion, that's when you get errors worth millions. In the case of this particular 2003 P nickel, something went catastrophically wrong with the feeding mechanism, causing the coin to be struck not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, with the coin rotating approximately 45 degrees between each strike, creating an overlapping pattern of images that looks almost like a blurred photograph or a kaleidoscopic vision of Jefferson's face. And this isn't just a minor doubling that you need a magnifying glass to see. This is a dramatic, obvious, spectacular error where you can clearly see 3 separate impressions of Jefferson's profile, 3 Liberty inscriptions, 3 date stamps, all overlapping in a way that creates an almost artistic effect, like something a modern sculptor might intentionally create, except this was completely unintentional, a mistake that should never have left the mint, making it extraordinarily rare and valuable. The discovery story of this coin is absolutely fascinating and shows once again how valuable numismatic treasures can be hiding in the most unexpected places, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. According to authenticated records from the eventual auction of this piece, the coin was originally discovered in 2008 by a construction worker who had stopped at a convenience store to buy a drink and received the coin as change. And this worker, who had a casual interest in coins but was by no means an expert, noticed immediately that something looked very strange about this nickel, that Jefferson's face appeared blurred or tripled, and instead of assuming it was damaged or simply pocketing it as a curiosity, he held on to it and mentioned it to a friend who happened to be an amateur numismatist, and that friend's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he saw it because he immediately recognized it as a potential triple strike error, one of the rarest and most desirable types of mint mistakes. They took the coin to a local coin shop where the dealer initially was skeptical, thinking it might be damage or post-mint alteration, but upon closer examination with a loupe and under proper lighting, the dealer realized this was authentic and this was spectacular, and he offered to buy it on the spot for $5,000, which seemed like an astronomical sum to the construction worker for a 5-cent coin. But the friend convinced him to have it professionally graded first to get expert authentication and see what the true market value might be, and that decision turned out to be worth millions. The coin was sent to PCGS, where it underwent exhaustive analysis by their error coin specialists, experts who have collectively examined millions of coins over their careers and can distinguish between genuine mint errors and damaged or altered coins with near-perfect accuracy. And after weeks of careful examination, including microscopic analysis of the strike patterns, metallurgical testing to confirm the coin hadn't been altered, and comparison with known authentic examples of multi-strike errors, they rendered their verdict. This was genuine, this was extraordinary, and this was potentially one of the finest examples of a triple strike error they had ever seen on a modern coin. The coin was encapsulated in a tamper-proof holder with a grade and description that made it clear this was something special. And when word got out in the numismatic community that a spectacular triple strike 2003 P nickel had been authenticated, the excitement was palpable, with collectors and dealers immediately speculating about what it might bring at auction, and the estimates started at $1 million and just kept climbing as more people learned about it and expressed interest in acquiring it. When the coin finally went to auction in 2010, it was featured as the centerpiece of a major numismatic event, with the auction house producing special promotional materials highlighting its unique characteristics and its importance in the pantheon of modern-era coins, and collectors from around the world registered to bid, some in person at the auction house, others by phone, and many more online, all competing for the chance to own this exceptional piece of minting history. The bidding opened at $500,000, already a life-changing amount of money for the construction worker who had found it in his change. But that was just the beginning, as the price climbed quickly through the first million, then the second, with each increment bringing the audience closer to the edge of their seats, and finally, after an intense 20-minute bidding war between three determined collectors, the hammer fell at $7 million, making it the most expensive modern nickel error ever sold at that time and cementing its place in numismatic history. But what exactly makes this error so valuable, beyond just its obvious visual drama and rarity? Well, there are several factors that collectors consider when determining the value of an error coin, and this 2003 P triple strike excels in every category. First, there's the rarity factor. Triple strikes are extraordinarily uncommon, far rarer than double strikes, because they require the feeding mechanism to fail not just once but twice in succession, allowing the coin to remain in the striking chamber for 3 separate impressions. And the rotation between strikes adds another layer of rarity because it means the coin was not only struck multiple times but also shifted position between strikes, creating that spectacular overlapping effect, rather than just a thicker, muddier impression. Second, there's the eye appeal factor. Unlike some errors that require magnification or expert knowledge to appreciate, this triple strike is immediately obvious and visually stunning. It's the kind of coin that makes people say, wow, the instant they see it, and that universal appeal drives demand and therefore value. Third, there's the grade and condition. This particular specimen was exceptionally well preserved despite having circulated for several years before being discovered, showing only minimal wear on the high points and retaining much of its original luster, which is remarkable considering it had been subjected to the stress of 3 separate strikes and then spent time in circulation. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, there's the story. Collectors don't just buy coins, they buy the narratives behind them, and a coin that was found in change at a convenience store, recognized by someone with just enough knowledge to save it from oblivion, and then authenticated and sold for millions, that's the kind of story that adds intangible but very real value to a piece, making it not just a collectible object but a part of numismatic folklore. The technical details of how this error occurred are fascinating and worth exploring because they help explain why such errors are so rare and why the mint works so hard to prevent them. Modern coin production is an incredibly sophisticated process involving multiple quality control checkpoints, automated optical inspection systems, and physical barriers designed to prevent coins from being struck multiple times. So for a triple strike to occur, several safety systems would have to fail simultaneously. The most likely scenario is that during a die adjustment or maintenance period, when some of the automated systems might have been disabled or running in manual mode, a planchet was fed into the press, struck once, but instead of being ejected, it remained in the striking chamber, possibly adhered to one of the dies by static electricity or oil residue. Then the press cycled again, striking the same coin a second time, but still the coin wasn't ejected, perhaps because the ejection mechanism was malfunctioning, and incredibly, the press cycled a third time, striking the coin yet again, and somewhere between these strikes, the coin rotated approximately 45 degrees, possibly from the impact of the strikes themselves or from air currents within the press, And finally, after the third strike, the coin was ejected and made its way through the rest of the production process, past quality control inspectors who were probably looking for more common errors and didn't notice or properly flag this extraordinary piece, and eventually into a bag or roll that was shipped to a Federal Reserve Bank and from there distributed to commercial banks and eventually into circulation where it remained undiscovered for years. The probability of this specific sequence of events occurring is so infinitesimally small that it's probably more likely to win a major lottery jackpot, which is exactly why collectors are willing to pay $7 million for the result, because they know they may never have another opportunity to acquire such a piece. And in the world of high-end coin collecting, scarcity drives value more than almost any other factor. Since the auction of this coin, the 2003 nickel has become one of the most searched for dates among error coin hunters, with thousands of people carefully examining every 2003 they encounter, hoping to find another example of this error or at least a lesser but still valuable variation. And while no other triple strikes of this magnitude have been discovered, several other significant errors from 2003 have been found and authenticated, including double strikes, off-center strikes, and wrong planchet errors, none worth $7 million but all worth substantially more than 5 cents, proving that the hunt is worthwhile and that valuable errors are still out there waiting to be discovered. One particularly interesting aspect of this coin's history is how it has influenced the broader coin collecting market and the public's perception of modern coins as potential investments. For decades, many people assumed that only ancient coins or pre-20th century American coins could be truly valuable, that modern mass-produced coins were too common to ever achieve significant values. But coins like this 2003 triple strike have completely demolished that assumption, proving that modern coins can be just as rare, just as desirable, and just as valuable as their ancient counterparts. And this realization has brought a whole new generation of collectors into the hobby. People who might never have thought about collecting coins, but are now paying attention to their change, visiting coin shops, joining numismatic societies, and learning about the fascinating world of mint errors and varieties. The educational impact of highly publicized sales like this cannot be overstated, because they serve as gateway moments that introduce people to a hobby that's intellectually stimulating, potentially profitable, and accessible to anyone regardless of their economic background. After all, you don't need money to start looking through your pocket change. You just need knowledge and attention to detail, and that's what makes stories like this so democratizing and inspiring. From a technical grading perspective, this 2003 triple strike was assigned a grade that reflected both its error characteristics and its surface condition, with PCGS noting in their certification that the strike characteristics were dramatic and unmistakable. Language that's rarely used in grading reports and indicates just how exceptional this coin truly is, and the holder included detailed photographs showing multiple angles of the error, allowing potential buyers to examine it closely before bidding, and these photographs became widely shared in the numismatic community, serving as educational tools that help other collectors learn what a genuine multi-strike error looks like, so they can potentially identify similar pieces in their own collections. The metallurgical analysis performed during authentication also revealed some interesting details about the coin's composition and the stress it underwent during the striking process, with microscopic examination showing distortion patterns consistent with multiple strikes from different angles, stretching of the metal in directions that confirmed the rotation between strikes, and compression characteristics that could only result from extraordinary striking pressure applied multiple times. And all of this scientific evidence was meticulously documented and included with the coin's certification, providing future owners with confidence that they were acquiring an authentic piece rather than a clever forgery or a damaged coin that merely resembled an error. The investment aspect of coins like this is worth discussing because it helps explain why individuals and institutions are willing to pay such extraordinary sums for what is, fundamentally, A small piece of metal with some stamped images on it? And the answer lies in understanding rare coins as alternative investments, similar to art, classic cars, or fine wine. These are tangible assets with intrinsic historical and cultural value that tends to appreciate over time, especially for the rarest and most desirable pieces, and unlike stocks or bonds, which can become worthless if a company fails, a rare coin will always maintain at least its collectible value because its rarity is permanent and its historical significance cannot be diminished. Moreover, the market for high-end rare coins has proven to be relatively stable even during economic downturns, with the most exceptional pieces actually appreciating during recessions as wealthy investors seek alternative assets to protect their wealth. And this stability makes coins like the 2003 P-Triple Strike attractive not just to collectors but to serious investors who view them as part of a diversified portfolio strategy. And indeed, the coin has changed hands privately at least once. Since its record-breaking auction, reportedly for even more than the $7 million hammer price, though the exact figure has not been publicly disclosed, which suggests that the market value of this piece continues to climb as its legend grows and as fewer comparable pieces become available. For the average person who's now inspired to search for valuable coins, it's important to understand what to look for specifically in 2003 P Nickels. First, examine the overall appearance of the coin. Does anything look doubled, tripled, or blurred? Multi-strike errors are usually quite obvious once you know what to look for. Second, check if the design elements are crisp and well-defined or if they appear mushy and overlapped, which could indicate multiple strikes. Third, look at the rim of the coin. Multiple strikes often create an abnormal rim that's thicker or more pronounced in some areas than others. Fourth, feel the weight and thickness. Coins that have been struck multiple times are often slightly heavier and thicker than normal due to the compression of metal. And fifth, if you think you've found something unusual, compare it side by side with a normal nickel. Having a reference point makes it much easier to identify genuine errors. The authentication process for any coin you believe might be valuable is absolutely crucial, and I cannot stress this enough, because the difference between a certified authentic error coin and an uncertified one can be hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Certification provides third-party verification that the coin is genuine, that it hasn't been altered or damaged after leaving the mint, and that it grades at a certain level of preservation, and this certification is especially important for dramatic errors like the $7 million triple strike, because the more valuable a coin is, the more incentive there is for unscrupulous individuals to create fakes or to artificially create errors through post-mint manipulation. So always submit potential error coins to one of the major grading services, and be patient with the process because proper authentication takes time but is absolutely worth the wait. Looking at the broader implications of this coin's discovery and sale, it's clear that it has had a lasting impact on how people think about modern coinage, pocket change, and the potential for unexpected wealth that exists all around us if we just know where to look and what to look for. And this democratization of treasure hunting, if you will, is one of the beautiful aspects of coin collecting, because unlike so many other collectible categories where you need significant capital to even begin participating, coin collecting can start with literally whatever change you have in your pocket. And yes, the odds of finding a $7 million coin are astronomically small, but the odds of finding something worth hundreds or thousands of dollars are actually quite reasonable if you're systematic about searching and educating yourself about what errors and varieties exist and what they look like. The story of the 2003 P5 cent worth $7 million is ultimately a story about attention to detail, about not dismissing things just because they seem ordinary, about the intersection of chance and preparedness, because that construction worker who found this coin in his change could easily have spent it without a second thought. But he noticed something unusual, he mentioned it to someone knowledgeable, and together they pursued authentication, and that series of small decisions transformed a chance encounter at a convenience store into a life-changing financial windfall. And that's the lesson I want everyone watching this video to take away. Pay attention, educate yourself, examine your coins, and never assume that something is ordinary just because it looks like pocket change. Because as we've seen twice now in this video, extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most mundane places, waiting for someone observant enough to recognize it. And whether you ever find a $1,000,000 coin or not, the knowledge, the awareness, and the possibility make every coin you handle just a little bit more interesting. And isn't that worth something all by itself? This magnificent 2003 P triple strike nickel, with its dramatic visual impact, its fascinating backstory, its record-breaking sale price, and its ongoing influence on the numismatic community, stands as perhaps the finest example of why modern-era coins deserve serious attention from collectors and investors alike. And it proves conclusively that you don't need ancient Roman coins or rare colonial pieces to participate in the high-stakes world of numismatic collecting. Because sometimes the most valuable pieces of history are being made right now in modern mints through accidental mistakes that create intentional beauty, and those pieces are out there in circulation, passing from hand to hand, waiting for their moment of discovery, waiting for someone like you to recognize them for what they truly are. Not just 5 cents, but potentially $7 million of compressed metal and minting miracles.